And welcome back to Troll Time with Ivan D. Curtis, aka the Troll King, and my right hand man, Antonio Williams. This is a show where we talk about sports, movies, and anything thought provoking. Right now, we're focusing on the WNBA, and four teams left. We're going to hop right into it. Hey, Willie, what's going on with you, man?
Hey man, I'm great, man. I can't wait for these games tomorrow. I'm really excited because, yeah, we're getting the four best teams in the league, so I'm ready for it.
All right. I mean, just to give some context. Of course, we got Las Vegas versus New York, and Connecticut versus Minnesota. All sweeps. All teams advanced through 2-0 sweeps. The Las Vegas Aces will be facing the New York Liberty at 3 p.m. on ABC. This is a rematch of last year's finals, where Las Vegas defeated the New York Liberty 3-1 in dramatic fashion because they were without some players in the last game, which I thought the Liberty would be able to force a 2-2 and take it back to Las Vegas, but they got some steady play from I remember Sidney Colson coming off the bench, providing a spark on the offensive end, and they end up pulling that game out. Hey Willie, I just want to get your thoughts on what this series look like.
I can't wait to see it, man. It's going to be great. Of course, New York feels like they have unfinished business, and if you're a competitor, if you're the Liberty, of course, this is the team that you want to see. Obviously, given the stature of both of these franchises as of late, this was kind of like the finals matchup that people thought that we would have wanted to see, but we're getting it in the semis. I ain't complaining about it at all because we're getting it when we get it, but we're getting it. That's what's important. I think again with this matchup of what we're going to see. Of course, we talk about Asia Wilson being an MVP, being the best player in the world, two-time, three-time MVP, best player in the world. We talk about that, and she's also going for three-P in terms of the championships. But to me, I feel like this matchup with both of these teams will be tested as we go to the bench, and I feel like the backcourts of both of these teams are going to determine who's going to win this and who's going to advance to the finals.
Yeah, now when you talk about it, just some first notable first round averages. Sabrina averaged 26 and a half points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals, while Asia Wilson averaged 22 and a half points, 10 and a half rebounds, 2 assists, and 3.5 blocks. Me personally, I think this matchup is kind of even. I would have gave the advantage to the Aces for the bench if New York hadn't picked up the pieces that they picked up coming into this season. I think Leona Fibers is going to be a main contributing factor if she starts or if she comes off the bench, however they figure that out. But Alicia Clark, Tiffany Hayes, they've been steady coming off the bench for Las Vegas. I think they're still gonna get production at Megan Gustafson if needed. I really think, man, that it's this. We're gonna talk about the next series, of course, but this whole playoffs really is gonna be about get back to me. It's both of these series. You got New York, trying to get payback from last year for the finals, and then you have Connecticut trying to get payback. Minnesota trying to get payback from Connecticut. So I think it's gonna be real intense. Stewie, I think is of course is always the X factor for the Liberty, but Jonquel Jones is somebody that we always talk about. That if she doesn't show up, it's going to be difficult for the Liberty to pull it out. I think this is going to be a big series for Jackie Young. She the, Normally athletic teams give the Liberty fits, and I see that becoming an issue with the Aces because you got Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray wasn't she wasn't really a X factor last year in the finals because she was dealing with injuries herself. Now, with her being 100%, I think that's going to be something to focus in on too. I just think player for player, of course, I think that Aces they can out athlete the Liberty. The Liberty, I feel like, is going to have to play perfect in stretches to be able to pull it out. I would, in a series, I always get a home team the first game.
Right, right,
That's just
right.
me.
Yep.
Not saying that. Now this is a different case, but I want to say it's going to dictate a lot for the Liberty. I think the Liberty need to win the first game to set the tone, and then have a fighting chance to go up 2-0 and then see where it goes from there. I don't think the Aces is going to, it's definitely not going to be a cakewalk. I think the Aces are, prime right now, and they know what's in front of them. But me personally, game one, we're gonna take it by game. I'm not gonna try to predict the series or anything right now, but I think game one, I'm gonna get the advantage to the Liberty just because they play at home.
Right, right. Yeah. It's interesting because I've said this, as people are walking with us, go back and check those other episodes. But I've said that the Aces, this is one of the few times that we're seeing a team going for a three-peat and they're not necessarily looked at as the favorite. So I think that plays in the Aces' favor. I also think, too, as I said, as it relates to the backcourts, I think the Aces are going to come out with that nothing to lose mentality, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on the New York backcourt. I say this a lot, and the way that the games are played now, you can't necessarily expect to stop great players, but one of the things you can do is make them play defense. So I feel like the aces in their backcourt with Chelsea Gray, of course, like I said, in that game clinching game, game two against Seattle, she controlled the game, absolutely controlled the game. So if she controls the game, places pressure on the Liberty backcourt, in particular, Sabrina Ionescu, if you make her guard, maybe that will take away some of her offense because Sab has been playing great, very great, and she's been playing in that first series just amazingly well. So with that being said, I expect Jackie Young didn't shoot that well in the first series, but I expect the Aces with their three-headed monster in the backcourt to put a lot of pressure on New York, which also means the Aces. I'm sorry, the Liberty are a different team when B Laney,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
Naja Laney Hamilton is very aggressive. When she's aggressive and she's scoring the ball, not only hitting those corner threes, but putting the ball on the ground, getting to the rim as well. That's another way they get paint touches. She really has to be aggressive. So I really think the backcourts are going to determine who wins this series.
Yeah, something I was just looking at. Jonquel Jones, she's averaged almost 20 points and 11 rebounds in the three games that they had against the Aces this season. Definitely, that's 5 points and two rebounds above her regular season total. So that's going to be something to pay attention to. One thing that we getting a treat out of with these last four teams that's left is we getting 4 out of the 5 MVP candidates.
Right.
Something to look for in this matchup. Of course, you got Asia Wilson, who is the MVP, and then you got Breonna Stewart. It's definitely going to be noteworthy to keep up with those two. I mean, they always show up. It's rarely you have a time that Breonna Stewart doesn't show up.
Right. Right.
It's really going. I think it's going to come down not only to the stars, but like I said, the role players. Tiffany Hayes, I definitely keep an eye out on her. I feel like she can present a ton of problems to New York, defensively and offensively.
Right. Right.
It's crazy to say all that because the regular season series, New York won 3-0. But of course, you know, the Vegas wasn't 100% each and every time they played them. Probably with the exception of probably the last time they played them. But even then, they've been battling some issues here and there. But I said I'm gonna pick the. I'm still gonna stick with the Liberty game one only because it's in New York. But it's gonna be a series that if New York doesn't take the first game and they let Vegas put their foot down early, it could be over with. Because this easily could have been a finals matchup. Me personally, I've seen a lot of people talking about like, oh man, this should have been the finals. I feel like that's kind of throwing some disrespect to Minnesota
That's right. Yeah.
for the work that they put in. I felt like if whoever got matched up, it came down to whoever was going to get matched up with the Aces. Whoever's the winner of that, I felt like would probably be the one to go on, of course, into the finals.
Right.
But these are the top four teams. So who you taking in game one between the Aces and the Liberty?
I think the Aces are going to take game one with that backcourt pressure. They're going to put a lot of pressure on the Liberty, and I think they'll win game one.
Okay.
I'm stepping out on the limb.
Oh, it ain't a far limb at all. Now,
I also think too, like I think the Aces are at this point too where you see this a lot with championship teams when they have the championship medal and they also know that they have enough talent as well and they're coached well. A lot of times, I'm not saying that they don't care about the games and they're not competitive enough to win in the regular season, but at the same time, you see this with championships caliber teams that have been there. You see it where they're like, you know what? It really doesn't matter who has home field advantage because we feel like we can come in your building and win in your building, even if game five is on your floor. So I feel like that with the Aces. I just feel like they're not. I don't know if anything they won't be even with the crowd being raucous in Brooklyn. I don't think that's going to shake the Aces. So if the Liberty win, it won't be because the Aces are shaken by the crowd or anything like that.
nah, no doubt. And I get what you're saying. I mean, they pacing themselves.
Right,
I mean that's what championship teams do. They're not using all the gas for one series.
right, right.
Now, of course, in the next series, we had the Minnesota Lynx, and who's the two, and then we had the Minnesota Lynx against Connecticut. Regular season series, Connecticut won 2-1. This also is a rematch from last season as playoffs, where you know you look at it, Connecticut defeated Minnesota last 2-1 in the playoffs and eliminated them. That's why I said this is pretty much a playoff of get backs. I mean, because Minnesota now is coming in the favorite in
Right,
this, and
right.
I think they have high expectations from them. They kind of been silently, I'd say silently flying under the radar because nobody has put them as the favorite to win it. So it's gonna have I think it's gonna have a lot of feistiness to it, man.
Absolutely.
hey, as you say, it's gonna be a big time rock fight.
Right.
And now you done added Marina Mabry to the mix for Connecticut, and then the game that they played in the regular season, it took Bridget Carlton to knock down a three to seal the game after it was back and forth for like the last 20 seconds.
Right. Right.
So I don't know, man. I think Connecticut is in a situation where they've been there, done that, making it to the semis, making it to the finals, and not winning it. I really think this is Minnesota's year. I don't see them folding in too many situations where they won't pull it out. I think they got too many skilled players, too many players that can attack you on any given night. I think that Connecticut, they're going to need some big output from Mabry. They're going to need some big output from Alyssa Thomas from time to time. Offensively, defense, they're going to play defense. Like there is no question about Connecticut playing defense, but
Right. Right.
they're going to need a ton of offense because Minnesota can bring it, and it doesn't always have to come from Collier. So that's the thing about it for me. Minnesota, I'm gonna take Minnesota game one. And it, and I really in this series, I want to say that if Minnesota blows out Connecticut in game one, that's gonna tell me a lot. I feel like that's gonna tell me a lot about the series. I think Connecticut has to keep it close. I'm talking 2 to 3 possessions to make me be confident in them that they can pull the series out. But I'm gonna take Minnesota game one.
Yeah, this series is interesting. You mentioned something about Connecticut, and I was just thinking this, man. I'll ask you this question. If we weren't talking about what's going on with Aja Wilson and how dominant she is, and New York sort of trying to finish the business, so to speak, I think those two things, in my estimation, I want to hear what you got to say about this. In my estimation, I think it actually helps Connecticut because if those things weren't going on, people would be talking about Connecticut and the fact that they never get over the hump. And that is such as it's a story that a lot of people don't talk about. As we know, we see this in team sports a lot where people get tired of you just being good. And I know it's a crazy thing to say, but we place so much emphasis on championships that when teams are just good, people act like they're bad.
Right.
And they right? So what do you think about Connecticut in terms of I know it's a different coaching staff and all those things, but this is just like the Aces having a bunch of trips in the row. I think the Aces had like 5 or 6 straight trips to the
Yeah,
conference semis. I
they
think
tied. They both have 6 apiece.
exactly, exactly. So, what do you think about Connecticut? Do you think, especially with their core, do you think there's this sense of urgency that creates pressure for them, or you think because of New York and because of everything that's going on with Asia, people just don't really talk about it?
Honestly, I want to say that it's it's really been amazing the run that they're on because if you
No
look at it,
question.
Jonquel Jones won MVP 2021. You lose Jonquel Jones, and they've still been the same. They still had the same amount of consistency.
What Jill Wine say? The same OC.
Right. So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, they continue to be competitive. They continue to be good, but
Right,
if they never get over the hump, it's trying to figure out like what's missing. And
right,
honestly, even when I was looking over some of the numbers, both teams have almost identically offensive ratings.
right,
So, but and it's crazy to think that because they're both strong on the defensive end.
right.
So, I think it's going to be one of those things where like Connecticut. I mean, it's they're going to have to do whatever it takes to get over the hump. Bonner is been amazing. She's getting older, but you can't tell.
Right.
And
No, you
then
cannot.
so I'm gonna tell you something. Brianna Jones has to be healthy, has to stay healthy,
We talked about
because
that on the last one for
yeah,
sure.
because now that I think about it, that's been one of the things that has been like a roadblock for them.
Right.
But yeah, I think really for them to just to be healthy and play, like they have to have everybody. I think your girl's coming off the bench, Veronica. She has to play well. I think that's going to be huge for them because the front court play for Connecticut doesn't bother me. Like they don't, they are pretty consistent. It's the guard play that
Right.
sometimes you don't know what you're going to get, and I think you can run into some big trouble against Minnesota if you're not getting good backcourt play.
Right. Right. So do you think that Connecticut, do you think they play with that pressure of trying to get or do you think they don't? You think it
No, I
doesn't
don't.
really matter?
I don't think they play with that pressure. I mean, because if
That's
if you really look at it, the the growth of what we talked about with Dejanay Carrington, arguably Connecticut probably shouldn't have been as good as they have been for this long.
Right,
They've been developing players over time that's been playing
right,
well, and that includes Brianna Jones, Dejanay Carrington, and then them getting supplemental pieces
right,
that help maintain their competitiveness and staying on top of what they've been doing. But
right,
and then of course, DeWanna Bonner is still playing at a high level. Towards got to be somewhere down the line towards the end of her career. But then Alyssa Thomas emerging into MVP type level play. That's what has really carried them. So
right.
I think now they hitting the pinnacle of like where it probably should start developing some type of pressure. And then even not to mention they did all this switching coaches, and,
Right. That's yeah.
like everything. So it's like it could be some pressure there, but honestly, it shouldn't be. I think until they have everybody healthy, it's hard to judge. And then, like now, you got Dejanay Carrington. This is her. This is peak level for her. Like
Right.
talking about somebody 4 years ago that averaged 8 points. Now she's giving you double figures.
Right.
That makes a big difference. I mean, now she's stopping people, and now she's putting it in the bucket. So I
Right.
think that's important.
Yeah, they are fortunate because as I said, in this instant society, video games, sports betting, fantasy sports, people are very much and as we in the media place such an emphasis on championships and that validating you and people literally getting tired of teams being good. And we see teams across the board in all the different sports that once, for example, we see this with the Baltimore Ravens, and we're in the WNBA show, but I'm just using the example. We see this with the Dallas Cowboys as well, where people, yeah, wake me up when they make it to the AFC Championship game for the Ravens. They did last year. Wake me up when Lamar wins, gets to the Super Bowl. Wake me up, Cowboys, when they win a playoff game instead of going 12-5. So we see this a lot where people just get tired of teams being good, and that creates pressure for that team when they're good. It's almost like they make the regular season mean nothing. And so for me, I'm very interested in the fact that Connecticut doesn't have that type of dynamic. And I agree with you. I don't feel like they play with that pressure either, but they've been so consistently good. You just haven't seen a fervor or heard of things getting at a heightened pitch about them getting over the hump. I think for me, I think Minnesota wins game one also. I think the other thing that Connecticut has to do is, and we talked about this in their previous series, where you got Connecticut as top defensive team in the league, top or a second in defensive rating, and even though they're second in defensive rating, they're about to face Minnesota, who is first, is super connected defensively, and we see that. Of course, led by Nafisa Collier, Defensive Player of the Year. Shout out to her. Um, but I think Connecticut really has to, if Minnesota is able to half court them and makes Connecticut execute in a half court, and to your point, puts pressure on the Connecticut backcourt to shoot the ball, also puts pressure on them to get paint touches through dribble penetration. I think that works against Connecticut. So for me, one of the things that they did against Indiana is they got stops, but they also went up and down. So for me, I feel like Connecticut has to force tempo a little bit and get some easy buckets and not allow Minnesota to set their defense. Because I feel like it's going to be tough for Connecticut, especially if Marina Mabrey's not making shots. I think that'll be very difficult. So Connecticut's got to get out in transition, if you ask me.
No, I agree. Just to round out this series, funny how Cheryl Reeves and Stephanie White is connected. Of course, Cheryl Reeves has got at the links to all four of their titles. Stephanie White was an assistant when Indiana Fever won the title back in 2012. and head coach when the Fever were last in the WNBA Finals in 2015. So they have some rivalry kind of built in with that as well. So you always been a big fan of Stephanie White. Both of us have really, but
No
you
question.
kind of drew me in to her. But Cheryl Reeves is, man, she's legendary, and she's coached some of the best, and now she got another one on her hands. I think Nafisa Collier exploded this season and kind of showed everybody where she's at in the bigger scheme of things. Because I still say to this day, nobody at the beginning of the season would have said, "Oh, Minnesota
No,
is gonna be where they at
no,
right now,"
nobody thought that. No, nobody thought that.
and they've been consistent throughout the entire season.
No
So
question.
I said it's kind of funny that New York was the number one team in the WNBA, but Minnesota handled them for the most part all season long. So definitely, I'm kind of foreseeing that possibly in the finals, but New York gonna have to earn they chips, and Minnesota's gonna have to do the same. But I think in a in Connecticut has to drag this series out. I don't think it's gonna be a series where they can get it over with in quick. I think for them it'll take 5 or at least 4. I think Minnesota they have the capabilities of making it 3-0. But I think that's how it has to be a true rock fight
Right, right.
for Connecticut to go all the way with it. Now, and, if it happens to be something opposite of that, I'd be totally surprised. But I think this is a short episode. We just basically previewing today's matchup. But got both of us. I think. Well, I picked Liberty first game, and then I'm taking Minnesota first game. I said that Liberty can't afford to drop game one, or they're in trouble, and then I think Connecticut has to keep it close against Minnesota.
Right, right.
But yeah, so Ava, I think who'd you pick the first game?
I picked the Aces. I said the Aces will win game one.
Okay, and you got Minnesota
Yeah, I
in
got
this one.
Minnesota in game two. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so pretty much on the same page. We'll be back again, recapping those games after they play game one. As I always do, hey Willie, you got anything you want to get off your chest?
Man, we could be doing this all day in terms of things I want to get off my chest. Again, interesting discourse about what's going on with player safeties and what is being said. And I think these are healthy conversations because for me, I know we always want to avoid sort of conflict, and because when people say conflict, that elicits thoughts of violence and things, and of course we don't want violence. However, it's clear that we need to have some nuanced conversations as it relates to respect, player safety, all of those things. So I welcome this. This is great. These are conversations that need to be had, and quite frankly, we always say that they are growing pains as this league continues to grow. Of course, there are triumphs, but there are also areas of opportunity. So I'm certainly looking forward to continuing to hear that discourse and see where I land on it, see where you land on it, all those things.
I got you. Hey Willie, for me, I just want to thank everybody who's been tuning in the show. I've been seeing the views go up a little bit. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But definitely we'll be bringing you guys a lot about what's going on with this last part of the WNBA playoffs. Also be coming at an episode recapping some of the college football games from over the weekend. Mainly the ones that we put our eyes on because we don't just talk for the sake of talking. But
No.
if you don't remember anything, remember this. I'm here to laugh, show love, promote, talk sports, movies, joke, and troll. catch you on the next episode.